now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Casa D18 Studios channel, and it is time, once again, to step into the war zone. That's right, it's time for another edition of the weekly acquisition report, the show where I, the Renegade, show you, the viewers, the latest additions to my ever-growing media library. And I know what some of you guys are thinking right now. Renegade, this is a different backdrop than we're used to. Well, yeah, I mean, usually when I bring you music content, I'm inside the record store. When I bring you movie content, you've got the curtains behind me. Most wrestling content, there's a wrestling ring. But today, I'm going to show off some books that I have brought into my media library. So I figured I would come to the esteemed library of Chase University, since I am a Chase U alumnus, and show you the latest additions to my book collection. And I know some of you are sitting at home right now thinking, Renegade, I didn't know you were an avid reader. If I'm being honest with you guys, I'm not. Never really have been. There is one type of thing that I always did enjoy reading, though, and that was autobiographies, stories by the subject about their life, specifically wrestling autobiographies. And once upon a time, I had a vast collection of wrestling autobiographies. And I told you on a previous episode I would give you this story once we got to the books. So here it is. When the Casa D18 Studios originally dissolved in 2014, I moved from Long Beach to Upland in the Inland Empire. I pretty much only took what I could carry with me because it was my essentials at the time. I brought what I needed to move into my new place with my new roommates, and I left behind everything that I didn't really have room for, some of which were my wrestling books. This ended up being a big mistake in the long run. Thankfully, my daughter's mom came behind me, grabbed all that stuff, and she decided to keep it at her house at the time until I was in a position where I could get it again. I thank her for that. The downside of that, though, is not wanting to take up too much room in her own house and garage. She kept the stuff in a box outside of the house. You can only imagine what happened from there. Slight tarp on top of it to try to cover it, but rain, wind, extreme sunlight completely destroyed the books. What sucked even more about that is that a good chunk of them were autographed, and some of them I can't reobtain those autographs. I had Dusty Rhodes' book signed by the American Dream, Rowdy Roddy Piper's book signed by the Hot Scott himself, Bobby the Brain Heenan's book signed by the Weasel. All of them have since passed. So even if I were to obtain their books again, I can never get them signed. The only book that for whatever reason went unscathed was Walking a Golden Mile by William Regal. I still have that in my collection. It is still signed. It's the crown jewel of my collection right now because it's the only autographed book that I still have. And if I'm being honest, at the time I got it, it was one of the crown jewels anyway because I made William Regal pop when I gave that to him to sign. It was a SummerSlam Access. I went up to his table. He finished up with the person that was in front of me, and I sat the book down in front of him. And he looked at it, and he looked at me, and he says, "You bought this?" I said, "Absolutely, sir. You're awesome." And you could see his entire demeanor change. Prior to me, don't really know what was going on. Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe he didn't really want to be there. Maybe he was trying to stay in his gentleman villain character. But when I put that down in front of him, you could see this glimmer come about him. And we had a positive interaction. He signed the book, took our photo, moved on. The next person came behind me. And hopefully everyone that came behind me had as positive of an experience as I did, because I do feel that I changed his mood a little bit that day. So ever since that happened, ever since the books were more or less destroyed and had to be disposed of. It's been a mission of mine to reacquire what I once owned. Some of what I'm going to show you today is just that. Books that I previously owned that I have since reacquired. Some of what I'm going to show you today are books that were released since that time that I previously didn't own because I had gotten out of the fandom, that I now have to add to my ever-growing media library. And once I can set up my bookshelf, properly display all my wrestling books. The first book, and the first few books I'm going to show you, are ones that I didn't previously own. Everything is hardcover, as that is my preference when it comes to autobiographies. If the book did not exist in a hardcover and only existed in a paperback, then that's what I will get. But if I have the option for a hardcover, that's what I'm going to get. So the first book, don't laugh, it's actually the title of it. The Book of Booty. Shake It, Love It, but Never Be It, by The New Day. This is a book that I never owned. The New Day were still in their infancy when I got out of the fandom. But on this, it talks about how fans will learn the feel-good story of 3 underestimated superstars turned WWE juggernauts. Undisputed facts of their strategies and their title reigns. How to raise your New Day IQ with brain-busting trivia. How to feel the power from zany outfits to beloved instruments and fierce rivals. The New Day world is all here. And how to dance like Big E, find your spirit animal, bake with Bootios, and much, much more. This just looks like it's going to be a fun read all around. It doesn't look like it's that long of a book. Should be a short read, something that could be accomplished in virtually no time at all once I do crack it open. The next book I assumed was only available in paperback, but I was actually able to find it in a hardback form. Crazy is My Superpower by A.J. Mendez Brooks. I believe when it originally came out, it was only in paperback because I think originally it just said A.J. Mendez. But the hardback has Brooks on there. Of course, now she's married to CM Punk, Mr. Phil Brooks. I think the hardbacks were released after the marriage. In any event, I have AJ's book now. Hardback format. Very much looking forward to reading this. I miss AJ in the WWE and in the ring, period. The next one, I will admit, I'm a little bit upset about, maybe upset's not the right word, I'm a little bit bummed about, because when I was looking online, Evil Bay, this one was shown with its cover jacket. However, when I received it in the mail, there was no jacket. So I'm a little bit bummed about that. Now I have to go and see if I can find the cover jacket somewhere else. But it is Vince Russo's first book, Forgiven. I know Vince Russo is a very polarizing figure in the world of professional wrestling. But for the most part, I have always aligned my views with Vince Russo's. A lot of the stuff he says, I agree with. I watch his podcasts, his Russo brand clips that he puts onto YouTube on a regular basis. And like I said, I'd say 9 times out of 10, I agree with him. I think the biggest problem with Russo is that a lot of people go back to the Bash at the Beach 2000 with him. And that's a very divisive topic. Either your team Hogan Bischoff or your team Russo. And I feel like if you took a lot of the stuff that Russo says on his shows and you put them with a different messenger, I feel like people would take and put more stock in it. I like to say all the time on the Saturday Shenanigans and previously on Open Mic Night, if you had Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, saying the stuff that Vince Russo did, would you be so quickly to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, Taker. You're just bitter, Taker. No, you'd be like, oh, shit. You know what? Undertaker's got a point here. I think Russo's words get analyzed, overanalyzed, and dismissed because of who the messenger is. I don't think that's fair. The next book comes from a man who's also been very controversial in recent years, as he was a former National Wrestling Alliance champion. And a lot of people feel like he did not deserve to be NWA champion. He did not deserve to be in a lineage that had names like Harley Race, Dory Funk, Terry Funk, Ric Flair, Sting, Dusty Rhodes, AJ Styles. I'm talking about Tyrus's book. The former Funkasaurus, Brodus Clay, just Tyrus. Found it pretty inexpensive on Evil Bay. As a matter of fact, there's one seller. I'll put the link in the bio here in the description. But there's one seller in particular on eBay that I've had nothing but fantastic experiences with, and he has great deals. He has a buy 3, get 1 free deal. So you buy 3 books, you get the cheapest one, the 4th one free. That's how I got a bunch of these. It was just multiple orders from him. Did try a couple different sellers, like where the Russo book came from. Positive experiences with the sellers. Again, a little bit bummed about the cover there, but refocusing back to Tyrus. I think this was one of my freebies because of how inexpensive it was when I ordered it. But I know the man has had an interesting career. And I'm interested to see what he has to say about it. I mean, if you think about it, you really go back to the WWE. They were showing vignettes for a Brodus Clay that was just supposed to be this vicious monster, almost the same type of gimmick that Bronson Reed is today. But Brodus Clay got out of line, posted something on social media, and they turned him into the joke Funkasaurus. Who knows what would have happened with the man and his trajectory and his gimmick? Could he have been a world champion if they had stuck with that massive heel gimmick that, again, guys like Bronson Reed are really kind of showing on today's programming? I'm curious to see what Tyrus has to say. The next 2 had to be together. I mean, really, how could they not be? One of them is a book by a set of twins. The other one is a book by the husband of one of those twins. First and foremost, we've got Incomparable by Brie and Nikki Bella. Now, of course, Brie and Nikki Garcia, but the Bella twins. And then I've got Yes, My Improbable Journey to the Main Event of WrestleMania by Daniel Bryan Danielson. I mean, this is a package deal here. You got Brie and Bryan. need I say more? I'm sure Brian is going to have another book to put out chronicling everything since that WrestleMania 30 victory. You know, you figure the injury announcement, you figure his heel title run with the hemp title belt, you figure his transition to AEW and everything he's doing there. He's going to have another story to tell as well. And who knows if these girls, whether as a unit or as individuals, will have another story to tell as well. But I'm definitely looking forward to getting into both of those. Now we're going to transition into the stuff that I did own, that I reacquired for my library for this video. Got more stuff over there for a future video that I previously owned, but I only wanted to fit 10 books into a video. This first one might surprise people that I owned it, considering the way I always speak about this individual. But it was because of this book that I began speaking of him in that way. Batista Unleashed. In this book, he mentions the cheating on his wife with Melina in the car at the venue while his wife is backstage sick. This is where I learned that information. From the proverbial animal's mouth himself. And you guys may be wondering, well, if you hate him so much, why would you put money back into his stuff? Only because I wanted to reacquire what I had previously lost. And it is because I owned this book, because I read this book, that I learned this information. So I definitely needed to have this in my library so that if people doubt me, I can find it and bring it up for them. And show them, again, from the animal's mouth himself, his own admittance of it. The last three books, I don't think are going to surprise anybody that I owned these. First up, It's Good to Be the King. Sometimes, by Jerry the King Lawler. I mean, this talks about his entire career, goes back to Memphis. It talks in detail about the Andy Kaufman stuff back in the early 80s. Jerry the King Lawler is definitely a character. And I thoroughly enjoyed his read the first time. I don't know if I will get the opportunity to crack it open and read it all again. If I do, I would be curious to see if I enjoy reading it through a second time. But I enjoyed it enough the first time, and again, reacquiring what was once lost. I now own this again, and that means a lot to me. What? The Stone Cold Truth by Stone Cold Steve Austin with Jim Ross. The Texas Rattlesnake, man. I mean, how can you go wrong with arguably the leader of the Attitude Era? Some people can argue Shawn Michaels. Some people can argue The Rock. But without Austin versus McMahon, and again, I know McMahon is a touchy subject these days. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. But without Austin versus McMahon, does the Attitude Era in WWF reach the heights that it does? No. And this is Austin's story from Austin's mouth. He goes in depth about why he walked out when he did. And if you've never heard his story about that, it's definitely worth getting, if for no other reason but to hear that. Last, but certainly not least, for this video of wrestling books, your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle. Oh, it's true. It's true. And in true Kurt Angle style, there's even a sticker here that looks like a medal. It says former New York Times bestseller. So obviously this was a reprint, a reissue, after it had already had its championship reign, if you will, on top of the New York Times bestsellers list. Second, third print, whatever. And they included that sticker right about on the spot in his chest where his medals would be, if you really want to take a look at it and think about it there. Great marketing. But Kurt Angle's book is another really fun read. You get the opportunity to go inside his mind and just see how funny of a guy he is. You should already know from watching WWE programming, he's got no problem making fun of himself when the time is right. He exposes some more of that sense of humor in the book here. Highly recommend it. What do you guys think of this haul of wrestling autobiographies? Is there anything that surprised you, aside from maybe the fact that I got the Batista book? Let me know, leave your thoughts in the comments. Have you read these 10 books? What was your favorite? What was your least favorite? Which of these books would be the first one you would recommend to a friend or to somebody who's never been into wrestling before? Be like, hey, read this book by this wrestler. Maybe you get a different perspective of the sport, the entertainment, the art form. Let me know. Leave your thoughts in the comments. As you know, I always love engaging with you, discussing with you guys. Let's have that banter back and forth. And until the next time that we enter the war zone with a brand new weekly acquisition report, I am Chase U alumni, the Renegade of Wrestling, J.J. Williams. Thanking you guys for joining me. And I will see you guys next time.